Before we get deep into the story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you are hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Sarah Mitchell stared at the certified letter in her trembling hands, reading it for the third time. The words hadn't changed. Her uncle Victor Ashford, a man she'd never met, never even heard of, had died and left her everything. $47 million, a mansion in the countryside, investment portfolios, all of it hers. This has to be a scam, she muttered, glancing around her cramped studio apartment. The walls were so thin she could hear her neighbor's television right through them. Her bank account had exactly $217. She'd been just 3 weeks away from eviction. Her husband James snatched the letter from her hands, his eyes widening as he read. It's from Blackwood and Associates. That's a real law firm, Sarah. I've seen their commercials. But why me? Sarah replied, her voice barely a whisper. I don't have any family. My parents died when I was 6. I grew up in foster care. The letter says Victor Ashford was your mother's brother. James was already pulling out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. Holy shit, Sarah. This guy was loaded. Look, there are articles about him. A reclusive billionaire who made his money in pharmaceuticals. Sarah took the phone, her heart pounding as she scrolled through images of a sprawling estate surrounded by iron gates and ancient oak trees. Ashford Manor. It looked like something from a Gothic novel, all stone facades and shadowed windows. There's a meeting scheduled, James said, jabbing his finger at the letter. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the estate. We have to go. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the few memories she had of her mother, the faded photographs she'd carried through every foster home. A young woman with sad eyes and a distant smile. Had her mother known about this wealthy brother? Why had they never been in contact? The questions swirled in her head, unanswered. The drive to Ashford Manor took 4 long hours. As they wound up the private road, Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. The mansion was even more imposing in person, 3 stories of gray stone, with towers on each corner and ivy crawling up the walls like grasping fingers. It felt cold, unwelcoming. A man in a crisp suit waited at the entrance. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Robert Blackwood. Thank you for coming. His handshake was firm, professional, but his eyes held something else, something she couldn't quite place. Was it pity? Or maybe fear? Inside, the manor was a museum of wealth. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, oil paintings and gilded frames lined the walls. And the furniture probably cost more than Sarah had earned in her entire life. But something felt deeply wrong. The air was heavy, oppressive, and every surface, from the mahogany tables to the velvet chairs, was covered in a thin, undisturbed layer of dust. It was as if no one had truly lived here for years. Before we discuss the inheritance, Blackwood said, his voice echoing slightly as he led them into a study lined with leather-bound books. There are conditions you must understand. Your uncle was very specific about the terms. He opened a thick file folder, and Sarah caught a glimpse of dozens of pages covered in dense legal text. What kind of conditions? James asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Blackwood's expression darkened. He looked from James to Sarah, his gaze lingering on her for a moment too long. The kind, he said slowly, that can't be broken. Robert Blackwood spread the document spread across the mahogany desk, each rustle of paper echoing in the cavernous office. The lawyer, Robert Blackwood, moved with the kind of practiced precision, but I saw the slight tremor in his hands. He cleared his throat. Your Uncle Victor was an unusual man, he began, his voice dry as old parchment. Brilliant, but deeply, deeply troubled. The conditions of his will are specific, and they are absolutely non-negotiable. If you violate even one, you forfeit everything. The entire estate, every last penny, will go to a medical research foundation. I leaned forward, my heart starting to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. What are the conditions? First, he said, ticking them off on his fingers, you must live in Ashford Manor for a minimum of 1 year. You cannot leave the property for more than 24 consecutive hours. Second, you must complete a specific task each month. These tasks were detailed by Victor himself in a series of sealed envelopes. And third, and this is crucial, you cannot tell anyone outside these walls about the nature of the tasks or the conditions of this inheritance. My boyfriend James let out a short, nervous laugh. That's it? Live in a mansion for a year and do some mystery chores? What's the catch? Blackwood's gaze was chilling. The catch, Mr. Mitchell, is that 3 previous heirs have tried and failed. His voice dropped, becoming a near whisper that seemed to suck the air from the room. 1 forfeited after just 2 months. Another lasted 6. The third, he paused, letting the silence hang. The third had to be institutionalized. A cold dread, sharp as ice, spread through my chest. What happened to them? I asked, my voice barely audible. That information is confidential. However, I am legally required to tell you that all 3 cited severe psychological distress. Victor's tasks. They are designed to test you, to push you to your absolute limits. Why? The word escaped me, laced with anger and confusion. Why would he do this? If he wanted to leave me his money, why torture me for it? Instead of answering, Blackwood slid a thick, sealed envelope across the desk. My name was written on it in elegant, looping script. He left you this, the lawyer said. Perhaps it will explain. My hands trembled as I broke the wax seal and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was shaky, erratic, as if written by someone very old, or very, very sick. It read, "Dear Sarah, you don't know me, but I've watched over you your entire life. From a distance. Always from a distance. Your mother was my sister, and I failed her. I failed her so completely that it destroyed us both. This inheritance is not a gift. It's a test. The same test that I failed. The same test that drove your mother away from me, and eventually to her death. I need to know if you're stronger than we were. If you can resist what this house offers. What it demands. The fortune is real, but the danger is real too. Complete the 12 tasks, survive the year, and everything is yours. But know this. Ashford Manor has a will of its own. It fed on me for 40 years. Now, it's hungry for you too. Forgive me, Uncle Victor." I looked up at Blackwood, my mouth completely dry. What does he mean? The house has a will of its own. The lawyer's eyes darted away, refusing to meet mine. I don't know. I'm just the executor of the will. James grabbed my hand, his grip tight, desperate. Sarah, we don't have to do this. This is insane. But he didn't know. He didn't know about the eviction notice tucked away in my purse. He didn't know about the echoing emptiness of my bank account. And he didn't know about the tiny secret I was carrying. The baby I hadn't told him about yet because I had no idea how we could possibly afford it. My mind raced, weighing the madness against the desperation. I took a deep breath, the decision solidifying in my gut like a stone. I looked straight at the lawyer. Where do I sign? 3 days later, they moved into Ashford Manor. Sarah had quit her job. James had put in his notice, and they'd managed to pack their entire life into James's rusted-out Honda. It all fit in the trunk, a testament to how little they had. The manor felt different with their things in it. Not warmer, exactly, but occupied. As if the house itself had been waiting for them. Sarah tried to shake off the unsettling feeling as she unpacked boxes in the master bedroom. It was a cavernous space, dominated by a massive 4-poster bed and windows that overlooked a desolate, dead garden below. James walked in, holding a thick manila package. It was marked with a bold, red number 1. "First envelope," he announced, his voice a little tight. "You sure you want to open this?" Sarah's heart pounded as she took it from him. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the instructions typed out with cold precision. Task 1. The garden. At the northern edge of the property, you will find the old greenhouse. It has been locked for 23 years. Inside, there are 12 rose bushes. They are dead. Bring them back to life. You have 30 days. Then came the rules. Do not enter the greenhouse after dark. Do not remove anything except dead plant matter. Do not tell anyone what you find there. A laugh escaped Sarah's lips, the sound echoing strangely in the vast room. That's it? Gardening? For a moment, I thought it would be something terrible. But James wasn't laughing. He was staring at the paper, his brow furrowed in thought. Why hasn't anyone touched the greenhouse in 23 years? Sarah, what happened 23 years ago? They found the greenhouse the next morning. A skeletal structure of curved glass and rusted iron, nearly swallowed by overgrown brambles at the far edge of the property. A heavy padlock secured the door, the key for which had been tucked inside the envelope. Sarah slid the key in and turned. The lock clicked, and as she pulled the door open, the hinges screamed in protest. The air that rushed out was thick, musty, and suffocating. Broken pots and dried earth littered the floor. And there, in 12 neat rows, were the rose bushes. They were in various states of decay. Some were just thorny skeletons, while others had a few shriveled leaves desperately clinging to gray branches. This is going to take a lot of work, Sarah muttered, already rolling up her sleeves. But it's doable. We can do this. She dove into the task, spending the next week obsessively researching rose cultivation. She ordered supplies online, spent her days carefully pruning away dead wood, and meticulously treating the soil around each dying plant. James helped, but his unease was palpable. He kept glancing at the greenhouse door, as if he expected something monstrous to walk through it at any moment. His anxiety was a low hum in the background of their new life, a constant reminder that this was no ordinary inheritance. They were living inside a game, and they didn't know the rules. On the 8th night, Sarah woke with a jolt at 3 a.m. She'd been dreaming about her mother, a comforting dream that was already fading into the shadows of the room. That's when she heard it, a faint sound, like fingernails scratching against wood, coming from outside. She crept out of bed and went to the window, peering into the moonlit yard. Her eyes found the greenhouse, and her breath caught in her throat. Inside it, impossibly, were lights. Small, flickering lights, like fireflies, dancing between the rows of dead rose bushes. "James," she whispered, turning back to the bed to wake him. But his side of the bed was empty. The sheets were cold. The scratching sound came again, louder this time, closer. Her gaze snapped back to the lawn, and then she saw him. It was James. He was walking across the dead grass, heading directly for the greenhouse. He moved like a sleepwalker, his white t-shirt glowing eerily in the darkness. Panic seized her. The rule screamed in her mind: do not enter the greenhouse after dark. Sarah ran. My bare feet slapped against the cold stone as I raced down the manor's grand staircase. The front door was wide open, letting in the biting October wind. I burst outside, gasping, "James, stop." He was at the greenhouse door, his hand on the handle. The lights inside had vanished the moment I'd left the house, but I could swear I saw shadows moving behind the glass. I grabbed his arm. His skin was ice cold. His eyes were open but unseeing, fixed on something I couldn't perceive. "James, wake up." I shook him hard. He blinked, and confusion flooded his face. "Sarah, why are we outside?" "You were sleepwalking," I told him, my voice trembling. "You were going into the greenhouse." "No, I was in bed. I was dreaming about—" He trailed off, his face going pale. "The roses. I was dreaming they were calling to me. They wanted to show me something." I pulled him back toward the house, my heart hammering against my ribs. The envelope said not to enter after dark. We need to follow the rules exactly. But over the next week, the dreams got worse. James would wake up with dirt caked under his fingernails, though he swore he hadn't been outside. I found muddy footprints leading from our bedroom straight to the front door, and the roses, despite my careful attention, they seemed to be getting worse, not better. The dead wood was spreading like a disease. On the 15th day, I was working in the greenhouse when I noticed something odd. One of the rose bushes had a small metal plaque at its base, so tarnished I'd missed it before. I cleaned it off with my sleeve. "Helen Catherine Ashford, beloved sister." My breath caught in my throat. Another bush had a plaque too, and another. There were 12 plaques, 12 names. I photographed each one with trembling hands. Helen Catherine Ashford, Margaret Rose Ashford, Elizabeth and Ashford. The list went on. All women, all with the middle or first name Rose or Catherine or Anne flower names. I realized with the growing, sickening horror. That night, I broke Robert Blackwood's confidentiality rule. I called him at his home. "The greenhouse," I said without preamble. "Tell me what happened there." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, "Mrs. Mitchell, I strongly advise." "Tell me or I'll go to the police," I interrupted. "There are plaques. Names. What are they?" Another heavy pause. Then, quietly, he said, "Your Uncle Victor had 12 daughters. All of them died before their first birthday. All within a 10-year span. The doctors never found a cause. Just sudden infant death, over and over. His wife took her own life after the 12th one. Victor buried the children's ashes in the rose garden and locked it away. That was 23 years ago." My hand went instinctively to my still flat stomach. "To the baby I hadn't told anyone about yet. The previous heirs," I whispered, barely able to form the words. "Were they pregnant?" "Yes," Blackwood said. "All of them." The line went dead. I turned to find James standing in the doorway, his eyes like black pools in the dim light. "The roses are hungry," he said, in a voice that wasn't quite his own. "They need to be fed." Sarah backed away from James, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. His eyes were normal again, but his words lingered in the air between them, sharp and toxic. "James," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Did you even hear what you just said?" He blinked, a look of genuine bewilderment crossing his face. I said, "I don't know what I said. Sarah, I feel like I'm losing my mind. I keep having these thoughts, but they aren't mine. They're about the greenhouse, about roots digging deep into the earth, about blood and soil." And he clutched his head, his face contorted in pain. "What's happening to me?" In that moment, Sarah made a decision. It was swift and absolute. "We're leaving, right now. Pack a bag." "But the inheritance," James started, his voice weak. "I don't care about the money," she cut him off. "Something is terribly wrong here." They rushed to their room, throwing clothes haphazardly into suitcases. But it was as if the manor itself was fighting back. The bedroom door, which had been wide open, suddenly wouldn't budge. The car keys, which James had left on the nightstand, were gone. His phone, fully charged just moments before, was completely dead. Panic set in. Sarah, desperate, decided to make a run for it. She bolted out a side door and down the long, winding driveway, but she barely made it 100 yards. A sudden, violent wave of nausea doubled her over, and she collapsed onto her knees, retching into the overgrown grass. As she knelt there, gasping for breath, The terrifying truth settled over her like a shroud. The contract, the one they had signed so eagerly, wasn't just a legal document, it was a bond, a shackle, that went far beyond the laws of man. Defeated, she stumbled back into the house. While James lay in a daze on the couch, Sarah locked herself in Victor's old study. She had to find answers. She tore through his desk, through drawers and cabinets, until her fingers brushed against a loose panel behind the towering bookshelf. Prying it open, she found what she was looking for. A stack of leather-bound journals. Decades of entries, the handwriting growing more erratic and desperate with each passing year, detailed the manor's dark secret. She had found Victor's final testament, and perhaps, the key to their escape. June 3 Ard, 1985. Margaret passed away at 3 months old. The doctors found no cause, but I know the truth. The house claimed her. 7 daughters lost. I planted white roses, but something feeds them, turning them crimson. My wife, Catherine, found my journals. She thinks I've lost my mind. Then, she heard the cries from the greenhouse too. Years later, uncovered the truth. This land, a plague burial site from 1882. A forbidden ritual. The roses consumed new life. I sealed the greenhouse, but it was too late. The curse spread. Sarah's hands trembled as she read her grandfather Victor's final entry. My illness will end me soon, but I cannot let this curse continue. Sarah has a strength I never possessed. Perhaps she can accomplish what I failed to do. Perhaps she can bring it all down. Tucked inside the journal were matches and a diagram of the manor. The inheritance wasn't the house. It was a mission. Dawn broke over Ashford Manor, but I wasn't admiring the view. I stood in the greenhouse, holding a book of matches and the manor's blueprint. The rose bushes looked disturbingly healthy, with new red buds like drops of blood. I placed a hand on my stomach. 6 weeks pregnant. This wasn't a coincidence. James found me there, his face a mask of fear. Sarah, I heard you leave. We have to talk about what's happening to me. I'm scared. I know what we have to do, I said, my voice steady. Victor left instructions. The house is evil. The curse, the roses. It's all built into the foundation. We can't leave. We can't forfeit. But we can destroy it. James's eyes scanned the blueprint, and understanding dawned. The gas lines, he whispered. We could blow the whole place. We'd lose everything, I reminded him. The money, the house, all of it. But we'd be free, he said, taking my hand. And we'd be alive. Our baby would be alive. I thought about the $47 million, about my old studio apartment and the eviction notice, the life I dreamed of security, comfort, and escape from poverty. Then I thought about 12 tiny graves under rose bushes, about Victor's wife walking into this very greenhouse with a kitchen knife, about James's voice in the dark whispering, "The roses are hungry." There's something else, I said. If we burn it, we can't be here. The explosion will be massive. But I found a remote detonator in Victor's office. Military grade. He planned this. We spent the day preparing, a silent, determined. We opened every gas line in the manor, disconnecting the safety valves. I wrote a long letter to Robert Blackwood, explaining everything. Evidence, testimony, a warning for anyone who might try to rebuild. I mailed it from the edge of the property. At sunset, we stood at the main gates, looking back at the house. It looked almost beautiful in the dying light, so stately and grand. I held the detonator. Once we do this, James said softly, we go back to having nothing. No, erected him. We go back to having each other, and our baby, and our freedom. I pressed the button. First, just a silent flash of light in the windows. Then the sound hit us, a deafening roar as if the earth itself was splitting open. Fire erupted from every window, every door. The roof collapsed inward, ancient stones cracking and tumbling. As the flames consumed Ashford Manor, I could almost hear screaming in the roar, the sound of something ancient and malevolent finally being released. The greenhouse exploded last, sending a spiral of glass and burning wood into the sky like twisted, dying stars. We watched until dawn, until nothing remained but ash and rubble. $47 million, gone. But as James took my hand and we walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years. Some inheritances, I realized, are just too expensive to accept. 6 months later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl in a small hospital 3 states away. We named her Catherine, not for the roses, but as a reclamation, a new beginning. The insurance investigation ruled the explosion an accident, old gas lines in an aging manor. Robert Blackwood never challenged our story. Maybe he understood. Maybe he was just relieved. The foundation got nothing. The land was deemed too contaminated for redevelopment and became a wildlife preserve. I read once that wildflowers now grew where the manor stood, but no roses. We were poor again, living in a tiny apartment with thin walls. James found work at a construction company, and I started taking online classes. But we were alive. Our daughter was healthy. And at night, when Catherine cried, It was just a baby crying. Nothing more, nothing less. I kept one thing from Ashford Manor, Victor's final journal entry, framed above my desk. It reads, "Some prices are too high, even for everything you've ever wanted. I never forgot." Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more.